if you're comparing what students from, let's say, poorer households versus richer households look like, or how they are, how they present themselves, there's actually an interesting sort of effect that you can observe at a certain point. Sociology would describe this as like the cultural capital that these students already convey and exhibit. But it goes to something a little bit deeper than that, perhaps. A lot of the normal expectation, I think, tends to be that students from poorer households are perhaps less well-read or are just more one-dimensional. And there is some truth to that. And that's largely because their external environment misses a lot of those upscale opportunities that would have granted them that diversity, whether forced or organic. But what you see is that even in families that are more well-off, that mentality often persists, especially up to a certain income bracket. But then if you keep going further up the income brackets, if you get into the scope for families who aren't just rich, but who are, let's say, who are old money rich, or are extraordinarily rich, or come from, let's say, a larger background, even if their wealth is not particularly enormous, then all of a sudden you see students who seem to have gone into a different dimension altogether. And for these students, I think the biggest thing that's the biggest thing that's different from students who are just from, let's say, somewhat rich families or just from poorer families is the sense of time or the sense of scale that they have and that they are comfortable operating in. For a lot of folks from poorer households or even from rather richer households, the animus that drives them, that drives their parents, that drives their overall environment is just about getting into college and just about getting into the best major at the best ranked university. Their decisions often lack a certain nuance. They're very, very straightforward in that regard, regardless of how well educated, well read, or well presentable they may be. Right? There are wide variations amongst that. But for these extraordinarily elite students, like the one cut above, let's say, for them, the biggest difference is their path seems to have been laid out for them, and they seem to sort of glide along it very effortlessly. At the other end, they seem to have a clear sense about exactly what long-term aim they're trying to go for. For them, it's not about getting into university, because it often feels like they know they're going to get into some university. Their parents have hired multiple counselors, have paid for various trips, are sending them to charities. In one case, I've heard about parents who literally started a multi-million-dollar charity just so that their son could serve on its board and work accordingly. So you have these excessive examples out there. And so for them, it's not just about making it to university. They know they're going to get in. They know as long as they just show up, they'll be there. And that gives them a sense of comfort and familiarity. And then they deploy that sense of comfort and familiarity to learn things that the other kids don't, to focus on things that the other kids don't. And they have a certain sense that they already have a time horizon, let's say, that's far broader than any of these other kids. They're looking to what their jobs are going to be or what role they're going to play in their parents' companies or how they're going to fit into a legacy of sorts. And so that sense of scope and that sense of scale and time is very fundamentally different. And I think that's the biggest difference that I've observed.